Alright, listen up, cabbies. I got your assignments. Riga, 643. Wheeler, 148. Nato, 804. And all of you. You need to join hosts HP and Father Malone as they examine one of the greatest sitcoms in television history, Taxi. In Night, Mr. Walters, a Taxi podcast. Banter, zero, like your boxing record.
Right, Mr. Walters?
We're in Way Media.
Welcome back to Midnight Viewing. I'm your host, Father Malone. We discussed two particular authors a lot on this show, Harlan Ellison and Stephen King. They've appeared on 2 or 3 anthology series that we've covered. In one case, Ellison adapted King. That was Grandma from the Twilight Zone 85. And both have made appearances on Tales from the Dark Side. In fact, later in the series, King will pen his first original for the show. The following quote is by Stephen King from the foreword to Harlan Ellison's short story collection, Stalking the Nightmare. I'm paraphrasing a bit. King starts with one of his mother's favorite aphorisms. Milk always takes the flavor of what's next to it in the icebox. Not a very useful saying, you might think, but I suspect it's not only the reason I'm writing this introduction, but the reason I'm writing it the way I'm writing it. Does it sound like Harlan Ellison? It does? That's because I just finished the admirable book which follows. For the last 4 days, I've been, so to speak, sitting next to Harlan in the icebox. I'm not copying his style, nothing as low as that. I have rather taken a brief impression of his style. If you start your period of hard writing as a teenager, you find yourself writing like whoever you're reading that week, your milk, and you taste like whatever was next to you in the refrigerator that week. That bit of wisdom came to mind when thinking about tonight's show for 2 very good reasons. 1, we're going to be talking wall-to-wall Stephen King tonight. And 2, what's true about authors or any creative types might be true of podcasters as well. When this show started, it was released sporadically, monthly, and then maybe twice a month. It is now twice weekly. That's a newish development, but a monumental one for me. And now the blame, the horrible shame can be laid at the feet of tonight's guest. A Year in Horror is the best horror movie podcast out there. I do several horror podcasts. I listen to all the horror podcasts. A Year in Horror is the platonic ideal. The main show is exactly as promised, a thorough investigation into every piece of horror cinema released in a given year. But he also does standalone shows highlighting every horror project that piques an interest and pulls in guests from every field, though usually from the world of music, because he himself is a music man first. He gave his life to that industry before switching gears and careers and finding his way back to the one true path, horror. For a podcast to work, it has to be either informative or entertaining. His is both. He is both. His enthusiasm and delight for the genre is so palpable, so infectious, I myself couldn't help but become refocused on the greatest fiction genre ever created. So if the analogy hasn't been made fucking transparent already, I'm the milk sitting in the icebox and soaking up the flavor of Mr. Paul Waller. Welcome to Midnight Viewing, Paul.
Holy smokes. That was impressive. Wow. Okay. You have the best podcasting voice. I'm so jealous. I love it. Thank you.
I appreciate that, but those sentiments are all true and all real, and I'm delighted that you've come to talk with us tonight. In fact, I'm delighted to be talking about what we're talking about, because I don't think I've done a podcast where we've discussed the greatest anthology film of all time. This podcast in general is dedicated to anthologies. The granddaddy of them all for me is Creepshow from 1982, directed by George Andrew Romero and written by Mr. Stephen King.
Coming soon. Jolting tales of horror. Creepshow. From the author of Carrie, The Shining, and Cujo. And the creator of Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. You'll scream at ghastly ghouls. Cringe at weird kids. And shiver at the doings of evil doctors.
This is going to be extremely painful, Mr. Verrill.
Creepshow will grab you, grow on you, and give you the creeps.
No, this is going to be an entirely new experience.
Creepshow, the most fun you'll ever have being scared.
Paul, what is your history with Creepshow?
It's so long. It's so like every vein in my body has some Creepshow blood flowing through it. It's just been with me since like my initial stack of VHSs that I bought, and I would watch it again and again and again as you do as a child. I can tell you that there was Nightmare on Elm Street, there was Hellraiser, there was Creepshow, and these were ones that would just be like, you get in from school, what are you going to do? I'm too far away from my friends. My parents are working. I'm just going to stick one of these on. And it would be like that for not weeks, not months, but years. So, yeah, it's just one of those films that I don't need to watch again. It's like that, you know, people say like Enter Sandman or something. It's like that. You don't need to watch it again. It's just always there.
Always in the back of your mind. Yes. You know, I find it funny. I listen to a lot of podcasts, Paul, and what I find is guests will come on and they'll say, this is my favorite movie of all time. I've seen it like, I don't know, 10 or 15 times. And I'm like, you what? What? I watch movies on a loop, baby.
Yes.
I'm interested.
What we used
comfort food. It becomes a soundtrack to my life. Just the background, like flurry.
It's weird. Since I've started doing the podcast, there have been certain films that you have to rewatch because for whatever reason they may not stick with you. Even if you watched it a few months back, you'll need to give it a cursory rewatch, and then you look onto Letterboxd and you go, "Wow, I've watched that 3 times in 1 year," and you know things like that happen. But when you purposefully sit down to watch something, that's completely different. There's a few, and it tends to be ones that are on YouTube as well. So if it's late at night, it's like approaching midnight or something, and there is like this found footage thing. I think it was the very first found footage movie. It's called the McPherson tape or something like that. And even though I've got the Bells and Whistles Blu-ray, I also know that it's there on YouTube, and I can just click a button and fall asleep to my 50-minute amazing film. And it doesn't matter if I wake up or just fall asleep and that's it. I've had the best time.
You know, 2 things about that are great. Like that's the best use of technology possible. The utter convenience to comfort yourself to sleep with the loving embrace of horror, but also I find myself, if I happen upon something I love on television or streaming somewhere or something, and I own the better version of it, the act of convenience. Considering how you and I are of similar vintage, I'm guessing. I'm a 73 kid, 1973. So there was a time in our lives where like those videotapes were gold. They were a lifeline because entertainment for us was, as I would say, it's curated, but it really wasn't curated. It was a bunch of programmers at whatever television stations you had available to you, throwing on whatever they fucking could get on the air, like at any given time. So the fact that I could say into my television remote now, play The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, and it will come on. Oh my God,
Man.
what a difference. These kids today, man.
The awesome thing about that is when you do that, like you'll be watching the thing and you'll know that as soon as he's poured the whiskey over the computer, that's where it would cut to ad breaks. So you're like, because we've just watched it so many times on our recorded VHS as a kid. It's weird, but yeah, that's us. Like, and I I'm never ashamed of it. Like when I talk to people at work, I'll go in like once a week to make sure they know that I'm alive still, and I'll be like, yeah, because it's very embarrassing if you're in a band that's had any success at all. That your work colleagues will go, oh, it's the rock star. It's like, well, I can sell out a venue that holds 150 people in London once a year. That I'm not a rock star,
You
but
know what?
like
They
they would.
can't though, Paul. They can't do that. So you are a fucking rock star.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure I am. But anyway, it's excruciating to be there. So what I've started to do is because I'm doing this, I will show off. I'll be like, oh yeah, I get to go to this film festival, or I went to that premiere or something like that. And it's the same thing again, but with movies. But movies are a whole different thing. It's so important to so many people because it's the one bit of the rights of growing up that we've all found our favorite movies. It's not something that you can avoid. Even if you like grow up and say, "I don't really like movies. I don't go to cinema. I don't watch films or anything." Star Wars. If you're of our age, you know these films, and it's such an essential part of our life. And I never feel ashamed of like presenting that at my job with my friends, anyone that's not interested in it. I'm obsessed with horror movies. I am obsessed. I love it. I don't ever want it to end. And when I started this podcast, I was worried about burnout because I did start by watching 3 or 4 a day, and I've sort of weaned it down over the years to 2. But still, even at this rate, I'm not going to finish my podcast until I think it's 2027. So, I've still got years to go of being this hard in it, and I'm embracing it. I can't wait.
I don't, you know what? I think that's a modest estimate. I think you'll actually go beyond it because the level of horror movies or the number of horror movies of recent, it's streaming and all this shit, and people are making their own things and throwing them up on YouTube. You're going to be employed for quite a while with this year in horror. You'll just be up to date. That's all. The year in horror, it'll be a once a year thing at the end, like a wrap up.
Oh, it'd be such a relief to do one of these things a year. Like I honestly, as soon as I finish this, I'm going down to edit for a couple of hours, and I'm sure you know. I mean, you just said two. You do 2 a week. That's wow. That's hard work.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, and I thought, the what's funny is the Father Malone Weekly Roundup, which is just me bullshitting with my dog for 20 or so minutes, seems to be the hardest of all of them. Like, just picking material like week after week. Anyway, we're not here to talk about me. We're trying to talk about you. And actually, when is your first? Was it on VHS? Your first viewing of Creepshow?
It definitely was, yeah. This is one that wasn't on TV, and if it was, I definitely missed it. My friends would talk about it at school in the sort of like, "Have you seen Creepshow 2?" And I was like, "Right, okay." So we know now roughly when it was because I hadn't seen it before Creepshow 2 came out because I remember all them posters, and it made me get Creepshow 1. But yeah, so with Creepshow, it was a VHS. I think it was a nice price one, which over here was like £4.99. So yeah,
That's
it was
reasonable.
like. Yeah, so I would get £10 a week growing up when I was like 16, 17, and that's what I bought. Oh, man, I just remember being so utterly impressed with Creepshow. And I was never a comic book fan, so it wasn't that angle that I fell in love with. I was already an avid Stephen King reader. So I think it must have been that aspect of it and that hook that he's in one of these. So yeah, let's investigate. But yeah, I didn't stop.
My experience with Creepshow was in 1982. I was 9 years old in an Almies department store with my mother, and she deposited me at the little book section so she could go shopping. And sitting there was the Creepshow comic adaptation, which for some reason was released months before the film. And if I'm sure you've seen it, if you haven't read it, everyone go get it. Artwork by Bernie Wrightson. It is fucking gorgeous. So I sat and read it cover to cover, read it again, read it again. And on the back it said, now a major motion picture. And I was distraught because I thought I had missed it somehow. But a cousin of mine, my older cousin Susan, I was 9, she was maybe 17 or 18, maybe even older. She had gotten me into Stephen King and horror movies in general, and she assured me this movie has not come out yet, but when it does, she would take me, and she did. And so I was there opening weekend for Creepshow at the Revere Showcase Cinemas, and they had in the lobby they had a standee built for it, and it was a cardboard version of the crate, and the sign said, "What's inside of the Creepshow crate?" In fact, I got a drinking cup at the fucking concession stand that had the creep on it.
Man, so good.
Yeah, man. And I became so obsessed with this movie. I bought every poster you could get of this movie. So we're talking about the one sheet. We're talking about the Jack Kamen designed comic book cover. I'm talking the British quad. You've seen that one with the creep pointing at the tombstone, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, that's Bernie Wrightson's drawing from the comic book, just sort of superimposed on that, which I love that one. Have you seen the French subway poster? It's the size of a wall. It's the Joe King character, the little boy with the voodoo doll, sitting on an open Creepshow comic with the creep with his hands splayed out. Somewhere in the credits, because it's the French poster, they advertised that there's going to be a Creepshow disco on a certain date. I always wondered what went on at the Creepshow disco. So you can tell
I can't imagine.
I've got some Creepshow bona fides, and it is one of those movies where, like you said, do I need to see Star Wars ever again? Not at all. It plays in my head. I can close my eyes and see it if I really want to. But more than any other movie, it's Creepshow for me. And I'm seeing that it is for you too.
Yeah, it's so there's not many movies that will work that way with me, or songs that I'm quite happy if I never see it again. And I've said before on my show that I'm not going to watch it again, although I did for this, damn it. But I was like, so I'm not going to watch it again until I can get a really good bells and whistles 4K with all the extras, because I've never gone in on any of the extras like that. So I don't know all the stuff about it. And it's one of those prize things that I'm just waiting. I'm just going to wait until it happens. I don't want to push it. I know there's loads of stuff on YouTube, and every time like that, something will pop up in my like feed because it reads your mind, and it's like, oh, don't click on it, Paul. Wait. So I'm going to wait. But yeah, it's going to come one day.
Well, once you get those bells and whistles, you're going to be very, very happy. If you haven't seen Just Desserts, the documentary that they have about Creepshow,
No.
Oh my God, Paul Waller. Okay, yeah, that's something. I'm going to share my screen right now. We're going to watch it. No. But okay, look. So you're obviously obsessed with the movie as I am. So let's put that to a test, shall we? You want to take a quiz?
Oh shit, no. Go for it.
Here we go, baby. I'm going to ask you for the next line. Okay. For example,
Right.
here we go.
You called me a bitch, so you fixed it all.
Give me that again.
Could you hear it?
I could just hear it. Yeah.
Turn the volume up a bit.
You called me a bitch, so you fixed it all.
No.
Ashtray back in
no
the
chance.
Check. Share over
I'm going to do so bad.
We've only got 4. You're doing well. You've got a chance. Ready?
Go.
We kept right on going and we didn't complain because we were doing what we wanted to do. Can you understand that?
Well, I don't even know where that's from.
Yes, you do. I'll play it again for you.
But we kept right on going and we didn't complain because we were doing what we wanted to do. Can you understand that?
No.
It's on the television while Mr. Jordy Verrill is lingering outside.
Oh my God.
No.
This is deep cuts.
Well, that's how we roll here. Okay, we're doing them in order of the story, so here we go.
Now, found a friend, Harry. I'm just wild about Harry.
Come on, Richard, get it out of here.
He's just getting revenge, Harry.
Hang on, let me play this scene. I know the scene. I know, yeah. No. God
For
damn it, no.
all the relatives of his you ate, baked, and stuffed at Malmaison. Richard Vickers. He's got a wicked, wicked, wicked mind. Okay, finally.
I'm gonna
You are
hand
gonna
in
get
my
this one. Paul, I have total fucking faith in you, man. And this one counts for triple the points. So you could possibly win. You ready?
I'm sorry to have to over to Amberson Hall and help me out. But as you so often say, what would I do without you?
Nope. Forget it. Forget it.
Get out of here. What indeed, Henry? What indeed?
Clearly, I should have watched this more often in recent years.
Yeah, man. This is one of those movies I can recite from the beginning to end, like every line of the movie. Much to the annoyance of my many partners over the years. Could you please let me watch the movie? No.
So that 2 minutes was the most stressful 2 minutes I've had. That was more stressful than playing in front of 5,000 people at a festival last November. I was like, that was nothing compared to that. I mean, geez Louise, I hate myself.
Oh, stop. You did fine. I mean, you did terrible, but you did okay. I don't like you any less.
Well, no, I've got to gain something back. You now have the right to not like me at all.
I'm not sure that that's a possibility. All right, Creepshow. Creepshow. Let's talk about the actors of Creepshow. Who stands out to you in this cast?
I mean, I've done a top five because I didn't want to sort of alienate my favorites, and I really wanted to make sure someone got a mention that rarely does, and if they do, it's just because of nepotism. So Joe Hill, my number five, is Billy in the wraparound, like so very important to making this whole thing work, and so believable. And as a kid, even though I saw it as a teen, he was the one that I was like, yeah, I get that. I've been in that situation, and I really felt for him.
We're talking about the wraparound sequence for the movie, which is the young child Joe Hill being scolded by his father to the point of slapping that wiseacre of a child and then throwing away his comic book, which evidently was a common refrain in the 1950s with the EC comics. I think King is playing into that there in Centerville, USA, which if you read the screenplay, that town is named Centerville. You know, it's funny. You and I talked on your show about checking things out virtually via computer with Google Maps and such, but certain things require a pilgrimage. Every pilgrim has his Mecca. For me, it's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So I went down because of Dawn of the Dead, clearly. I made a beeline for the Monroeville Mall, but just on the outskirts, if you just go looking a little bit, you'll find Carnegie Mellon University, which is Horlick's University here in Creepshow. So I've been to Amberson Hall. But more importantly, I visited Billy's house on Creepshow. And get this, it was the middle of the night and it was trash day. So all of the barrels were out on the street. It was pretty spectacular. I got close enough that they could have and should have called the police. This stranger lurking out there. But yeah, so the wraparound segment here, yes, but to your point about young Joe Hill here, or Joe King at the time, Stephen King's son Joe Hill, who is a fantastic author. If he is actually my favorite horror author working today, he's better than his dad. I'm sorry, sorry, Steve, but you raised him right. He's wonderful in this movie. You would not know that it was a non-actor child. This is a child performance that I love, where he just seems with it and not precocious.
I'm every time I watch it, I'm stunned at how good he is. And of course, when I initially watched it, I didn't know who he was. You know, for years upon years upon years, I did not know who he was. It's just someone I related to. Like, I had my dad throw away Motley Crue albums. There was this band in the UK that got big called Zig Zig Sputnik.
Oh, I remember Zig Zig Sputnik.
So they were on the front cover of a couple of magazines, and my dad, because one of them looked vaguely feminine, It was just lost his shit. That all went in the bin. So like I've lived that and I know that. And like it makes you clutch onto it even more. And it just from that simple setup, like I'm totally on board before even any of the shorts have started.
But we're also treated to this fucking horrible dad, but it's played by Tom Atkins. So he's imminently watchable. And I can see his point of view, even though I don't agree with it. And I don't like the mom very much because she's really just a wash rags. He's just stepping all over. And like, but I feel her frustration as well. Um, I love particularly that not only do we get that like wonderful exterior where he's actually throwing the thing in the trash, and we get to hear the creep making his way there, but when he describes to her why that piece of fiction needed to be tossed out, he names the stories. So it's, you want him reading that stuff, things coming out of crates and eating people, dead people coming out, people turning into weeds, for Christ's sake. Like, I love that there's throwaway dialogue fucking ruining the movie for you right there, and you just don't even know.
Right. This is so good. I cannot quote this film like you can quote this film, and that is really bugging me. Right. And I'm just thinking in my head now, right? Star Wars, yeah, I can quote line for line. So clearly I must start watching Creepshow on the regular again. Yeah, I'm
You
not
could do as
having
I,
this.
you could do as I did and just tape the entire audio track of the movie onto a cassette tape and then wear that and then put that in your headphones for your fucking Walkman. Just walk around listening to Creepshow. I'm not that obsessive, am I? Monomania.
When I was a we mentioned V in the show in my show earlier, and when that used to come on UK TV on a Friday night over the weekend, I would tape it and then I would tape it onto a cassette and I would take it to school and I would listen to it on my Walkman. V all the way there, all the way back. Like, oh my God, what a memory you've just hit there. Bosh.
Yeah, if I loved that movie, then I wanted to keep experiencing the movie. If I wasn't near a television set, like, gotta keep. I need the fix. The horror junkies. Yeah,
I'm enjoying this.
give me
Okay,
another one.
so at number four and at number two, actors from the crate. So at number four, I've got Hal Holbrook as Henry, and at number two, I've put Adrienne Barbeau as Wilma. I just think they're so expertly read that like it's the one short where if all the others went, even though it's not my favorite, I would like just happily watch that again and again and again. I think the performances are outstanding.
The Crate is the sort of standout of the movie, obviously. It is the most character driven. I think it's the most plot driven, and it isn't based on usual anthology short story twists. There's no twists going on here. It's a thriller. Unfortunately, in most horror anthologies, when you get a thriller, there isn't a whiff of the supernatural. Creepshow is wall to wall fucking supernatural. Even if it's just roaches, like what are roaches? Why are they so mad at him? So I always appreciate that aspect of it.
Oh, well, yeah, of course. And I would also say just quickly about Adrienne Barbeau.
Oh
I
my
got to
God.
talk to her. So yeah, when I got to talk to her, I knew like the whole interview, I was trying to think like, how am I going to get a little bit of chat about creep showing? Like, how am I going to do it? And because we weren't talking about that, I think we were talking about Scooby Doo or something, because she was in one of those.
Oh yeah, yeah. She was
And I
Catwoman too.
did.
Batman the animated series. She's fucking
She's
great.
in so much amazing stuff. But yeah, I managed to get a bit in and I was so happy with what we ended up talking about. But what was really annoying was the before you record and after you record, she was just so courteous and courteous to me. She dropped her facade sort of thing that you would do when you're ready, like one, two, three, showtime sort of thing. That dropped, and she just became like the mum. You know, she was so nice talking about her kids and stuff like that, and she wouldn't stop in it. Like I'm thinking, like I've really got to move on to my next interview, sort of thing. And yet here I am talking to her. No way am I going to stop it. So we're just chatting the shit. Like it was such a lovely thing to do, completely juxtaposed with her character as Wilma as well. Mad.
Yeah, Wilma, Adrienne Barbeau is the MVP of the movie. Like, there are a couple of performances here where you can watch it and go, this is a comic book, and it doesn't feel bad. Like if you were to say in most movies that, well, that's kind of a comic booky performance, you'd be like, sheesh, ooh, sorry about that. But Adrienne Barbeau read that character off that page, recognized Wilma as the castrating bitch from hell, and just went, I'm gonna go all the way with this. I think, didn't she? I believe she said something like, Romero kept going, you can go bigger, you can go bigger. And I think that was Romero's refrain to most of the actors, like King in particular. We'll get to him, but so like we'll get to Romero too, but like one of the reasons these performances are so good is because you got somebody like Romero at the helm going, I know what this movie actually needs. It needs the outsized performances to sort of to keep it going. But at the same time, Hal Holbrook is so fucking natural as Henry, so repressed and just so genial. Like what a pair, and they play off each other so well. Like this is a look, we know this couple, this couple,
Yeah.
we've been around them.
I've been in them. Right. Okay. Number 3, I have Leslie Nielsen as Richard, something to tide you over. And my number 1 is, people get confused by it, and they will often say that this is the worst performance. But for me, Stephen King as Geordie Verrill, I just think it's so spot on. And it's the one character in this thing that if I was going to get a tattoo, it would be that. If I was going to, learn to quote someone verbatim, it would be him. Like, I just think it is a performance for the ages, like from when I was young, from teenager to now, as like I'm a year away from 50. I would just so impressed with what I'm watching. And this was before I understand what film and cinema was, and I was just watching, a videotape. I wasn't into all the arts and craft of it. Like, it just instantly is so transfixing. I love him in this. My God, I love him.
When I first saw the movie, I knew who Stephen King was. I had read what minimal Stephen King they would allow me to read on my own, but I knew he wrote the movie, and while we were watching the opening credits, his name came up in the actors list, and my cousin grabbed my arm and said, "Oh my God, he's in the movie." And then so we're watching and watching and watching, and it's a little while into it. So the meteor is already struck, and he's already gotten the bucket of water and come and when he realizes you've done it now, Geordie Verrill, that my cousin leaned in and just whispered, "That's Stephen King." And it was like, I don't know, like people talk about imprinting, it was just like, holy God, that's the man. That's the Shining guy, which I hadn't seen at the time, but I saw the trailer on television and it fucking kept me up for weeks. Yeah, I had seen Carrie by then. Like I knew all of the books, and I knew his reputation, and I whatever little bit I could get. And like here he is, big as life. And to your point, yeah, it's the best performance in the movie. It's a heartbreaking performance. This is we can just jump right into Geordie Verrill if you want, because this segment of Creepshow gets the least amount of respect from the rest of them. It is never mentioned. When you and I first started talking and you mentioned that you wanted to talk about this segment, I was overjoyed because I feel like I'm the only other fucking human who adores this piece. And a huge part of that is Stephen King's performance. Side note, Tom Atkins, dick of a dad at the beginning, initially hired to play Geordie Verrill. And then George Romero went, "Oh, you know what, Steve, I think you should do it because you are a hick from Maine." So, and then Tom Atkins, you'll notice, is uncredited in the movie as the dad. But I mean, he did the part, but he didn't take the credit because he really wanted to play Geordie Verrill. And he might have been fine. He's a good actor. I might have enjoyed his performance in a different way, but I wouldn't have believed that Geordie was as dumb as he is. And for such a brilliant man.
So I didn't know it was Stephen King. I did not know it was Stephen King when I first watched it. I just thought it was like an actor playing a hick sort of thing. That's all I thought. So yeah, I even though I'd read Stephen King, it was so, we didn't have the internet. I didn't know. I just can't believe you were 9 watching this stuff. That's absolutely madness to me.
Yeah, listening to your podcast a lot, like I notice guests will come on and they'll say things like, "Oh yeah, I saw this when I was 14," and you'll be like, "That is too young." And I'm thinking, "Oh man, what? Wait till Paul gets hello to me, man." Like I was unattended and worse than unattended. I had a large gaggle of older, irresponsible cousins. They took me to the drive-in to see The Thing and Cat People. Like they whatever they were into, I was the mascot that came along. None of them realizing how twisting it was for my brain. But at this point in my life, I want to thank every single one of them.
Absolutely jealous. I'd wonder because like I was allowed music, but I think it was because of that video nasty thing that happened. Like my parents were so tight on what I could watch. So when I would get away with watching a V, which had those elements in it, and when I could watch the AIDS team and there would be like gun battles and things like that, it was just like there's a little curtain into like another world sort of thing. And of course, there was a certain age where I just they didn't care anymore, and I went crazy. But I think my obsession, unlike like being allowed that stuff and having it grow over time, it was just this need. I needed to see all this stuff that I'd heard about, and like, of course, like. I wasn't allowed to watch Stephen King films, but I could buy books. My parents would, oh, yeah, do you want me to get you Misery? And I'm like, yes. People are weird.
Yeah, it's potentially so much worse when you're reading it. Like there's a scene in Pet Cemetery, the book, where most people, I don't think it bothered them, but the lead character, the not Judd Crandall, the Dale Midkiff character from the movie, he's going to the Pet Cemetery on his own, and a Wendigo face appears before him. And King described it as this face gibbering at him a few feet away. And I threw the book across the room, man. Like all the lights came on. So to think that, like, yeah, read this book. This will be fun. Read Misery. That nothing untoward will happen in that. Definitely don't watch an episode of Tales from the Dark Side or fucking Creepshow for of all things.
Yeah.
The
No,
lightest,
I'm
the
with it.
lightest horror entertainment is Creepshow, and also kind of the most hardcore. We'll get to the great Fluffy eventually, but right now we want to talk Jordy Verrill because, first of all, right from the title. Now, okay, here's the thing: Creepshow is listed as an original screenplay by Stephen King. That is a lie. The Crate and a short story called Weeds had previously been published, I think, in Cavalier magazine. Weeds is the story we get here. It's Jordy Verrill. It was meant to be the opening chapter of a book where plants take over the world. And after writing the first chapter, he went, "Well, I don't know that I can do better than that." And he's right. So what we get here is Weeds adapted into my favorite title in Creepshow, one of my favorite titles of all time, The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. It's a title that tells you exactly what you're going to get, and then it delivers. And it's a little bit haunting to think because it recontextualizes your viewing experience. And at least for me, this is the comedy segment of this movie, and to me, it's actually the most tragic of any of them from the get-go.
I think it's perfectly pitched. That's the key to this one. We've established already in the film that this is a comic book. So we're watching a comic book unfold on screen. And I think by the time we get to The Lonesome Death of Geordie Verrill, what we're seeing is that comic book like leap off the page. It's so OTT and, as I say, perfectly pitched in that way. Now, like Adrian Barbeau said in that interview, like he was just saying, yeah, give me more, don't give me less, give me more, don't make it grounded. I don't know if Stephen King, because he wrote this, I don't know if it was something that he always envisions this way or he was pushed to go further this way, but whatever way it was, it nailed the performance like so spot on, because we do need levity in this thing. It's not a serious, like, scary film. It's got aspects of things that will keep you up, but like I personally just think that if everything else is fantastic, it's awesome, but this just goes the extra mile. There's something that you can't name, and as I say, the best I can get is it's just so perfectly pitched. Everything about it is right.
Creepshow, on the whole, is an ode to the old EC comics, Tales from the Crypt, Vault of Horror, Haunt of Fear. I'm sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought, Paul. What was the last thing you just said about?
I just going on about how it is so perfectly pitched.
Oh, perfectly pitched. Absolutely, the Lonesome Death of Jody Verrill. So so the whole thing is based on those. And we've gotten some film adaptations of them, and we had the Tales from the Crypt television series and stuff. And what most of those get wrong when they go to adapt any of the stories is they think what we're looking for as a horror audience is gore, true, guilty, but they also think we need the twist. We need the sort of comedic black comic kind of through line to sort of rear its head at the end. But what they don't realize is that the stories that always stick out to us are the ones that do not follow that pattern at all, that seem completely out of left field. There's nothing EC about this story. I mean, in the traditional sense of the dead person, like Father's Day, yes, that is the absolute perfect distillation of EC comics. You did a murder, you're gonna fucking pay for it. Here, there is no villain other than his own inability to act on what's happening around him. That's remarkable. It's a one character thing. It's a two-hander because we get Bingo O'Malley playing all the other people he interacts with in his fantasies, which is a whole other thing that's fantastic.
It is.
It's so distinct from the others in every way. I think that puts people off about it. I think they can't really get a handle on it, which is why they don't appreciate this one as much as, say, Something to Tide You Over, which is, I'm doing something bad to you, now you do something bad to me.
Yeah, I think maybe there is a lot of that. It is so straight as well. It is so overacted. Like it actually pisses people off. But like when there's a couple of moments in it that sort of like give you this is why he's acting in that way. This is this person. And the first thing is that he had to take a bank loan out for $200. Like that's like I worked it out today. That's only $650 in today's money. That's nothing. And yet he's had to take a loan out for that. And by the looks of it, he's a farmer. You know, he's not got any money. He's totally poor. And then the expression nunkhead, like what's a nunkhead? Like these,
well,
like
here's the thing that word is lunkhead, but
no, but I've gone over it again and again.
A main patois, you're getting lunkhead.
Yeah, because I with a capital N, like, and me and my brother used to quote that bit to each other, like, "Oh, Paul, you nunkhead," and like. And then I was like, right, there's no such word as nunkhead. So like a few years ago, I would be watching it again and again. And I was like, no, I'm satisfied with that. Nunkhead it is. So because lunkhead is
he perverted the word into something that's lives forever in your mind now. Well, mine too, because I mean, even though I know he's saying lunkhead, I can hear him saying nunkhead.
Yeah, I want you to re-listen and try and remove the letter N. It's impossible.
I'm gonna drop that in right here.
Thank you.
Oh man.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Vindicated. Right. Okay. Also, we can't talk about this segment without the set dressing of his abode. It's fantastic from before the weeds to after the weeds to the end. It's just incredibly set dressed. Yeah. And this is one of the things where when I do get my Bells and Whistles box set, I'm going to be like, how did they do this? What did they do here?
Can I hip you to some of the facts of this particular segment?
Come on, go for it.
Okay, this was filmed entirely in the gymnasium of a girls' high school. That in Pennsylvania. Now, Romero, you lived through the 90s. You lived through the independent film boom when suddenly a bunch of filmmakers making movies about making movies figured that they had created independent cinema. There was this other guy who'd been doing it for some time named George Romero, who somehow got major studios to back him to make this fucking comic book adaptation. And he said, you know what? I'm going to shoot it here in Pittsburgh. And well, we need a studio for some sets. Girls' Gymnasium. I love him. And all the interiors are set there. They built a house. They found like a patch of land to build the farm so they could shoot the exteriors in, which evidently threw off local pilots who suddenly found that there was a farm where there had not been farm before, and an aged one at that. So apparently there was some concern there. And the set dressing you mentioned is done by a fellow by the name of Cletus Anderson, who did most of Romero's movies. And he can be seen here as the host of the party in The Crate, who introduces Wilma to Tabby and her husband. That's
okay.
And his work is spectacular. Like the set dressing inside, it does not look like a set, and that's a lot of that is Romero, who's a fucking phenomenal filmmaker, obviously, and his lighting people. But it is so particular. It is so lived in. It does not feel like a movie. Like ordinarily, you can tell when there's a costume that just got sewn, or the paint is still drying on the walls. But here, it's fucking fantastic.
Yeah, as I say, I've got an old DVD of this that I've had many years, and I rewatched it like very late one evening a few days ago. So I was sort of in and out, but as I say, I know it very well. Not as well as I thought, apparently, but we'll get. I can't believe I failed that so miserably. Anyway, so I've watched it, and I did. I noticed when I watched it that I could see, now I'm so used to 4K that I could see some of like the grass when it's stuck to his face before it goes really bad, like when he's pouring himself the bath. And I just thought, oh, that's going to look really bad in 4K. When I get that 4K, that's going to look bad. But right now it's okay. But like I remember on VHS, like this thing was just everything to me. Like the world looked lived in. Like I didn't know like about sets or anything like that when I was like, even when I was like 17 watching this thing, like it wouldn't have occurred to me it would have been a set. I would imagine that would have been his actual house that Stephen King lived in, you know. But my word, it's just so gorgeous. It's so right. And yeah, it doesn't look real in any way. It looks comic book, but it's so well presented. What's he say? His name was Cletus.
Cletus Anderson.
Absolute genius. Like honestly, hairs on my neck when I think about like the things that have stood with me through my horror loving life, which is most of my life. Like that set dressing in that room is like, why are you thinking about that? It's so perfect, so crazy. It's great.
Paul, do you ever get to the States?
Yeah,
yeah. When you've been here, have you partaken in any of our haunted attractions at, say, Universal Studios?
I stayed on International Drive, and because we didn't want to stay in Disney or anything like that, so it was only Florida, and we used International Drive as a base, so we could do the theme parks, but we could also explore Florida itself and go to the more sketchy areas and things because we just wanted to do that. So we decided to follow a roller girl team because they were playing a few areas around in the couple of weeks that we were there. So that was great. We did that. And when on one of these treks, we went past this thing on International Drive, which was like a big castle that was just in the middle of, like, it just looked like it'd just been put there. And it was a scary attraction. And I've never been as scared before or since than walking through this castle one end to the other with the guy in a leather face mask with a chainsaw that I could smell fuel. Obviously, it was blunt. I didn't care. I was running through that. I did not get my money's worth. I was so scared. So yeah, I've got an experience of it. Wherever you're going, I want to know because these are the best story. These things are freaky scary.
Yeah, well, I'll get to I'm talking specifically about Halloween Horror Nights, which is the Universal yearly attraction. Starts in September, runs all September, all through Halloween. Sometimes after Halloween, which is always a delight when everyone is already over it, and I jump in there. But before I sort of became dedicated to haunted attractions, I was actually worked in a haunted attraction here in Las Vegas. Eli Roth's Goratorium was a year-round haunted attraction here on the Las Vegas Strip. And inside was a decrepit casino, many, many rooms, and there were many actors in those rooms who were chasing you around. I was one of those. So I've seen scare attractions from both sides. And what's funny is you're absolutely right because you ran through, you did not get the full experience. I can't speak to, I know the actual attraction you're talking about because I've been to it on iDrive. I can't remember the name of it, but because I've also been to Halloween Horror Nights at Universal in Orlando, but I primarily go to the one in Hollywood. Well, in 2019, when the Creepshow television series premiered, they had a Creepshow house at Universal Studios. And you walked in, like the facade was the giant open comic book with all the back issues from the back of this comic book. Oh boy. So you step into it and then you're basically walking through the panels of the comic book and it's all the panels from the actual Bernie Wrightson thing, but a lot of them from the movie, the little transition animations that slowly dissolve from the yeah. So all of that and then you get three rooms that are themed from the movie Creepshow and then I think two that are themed from the television series. So I hate to say it, but a waste of time. But the three Creepshow rooms you get to go through are the Father's Day one. So you go through the cemetery past that iconic Nathan Grantham gravestone inside where he jumps out and twists off the head of Aunt Sylvia, and then he of course emerges scaring the shit out of you with Aunt Sylvia's head on a tray. So you got that. Next you got the crate, which was disappointing because not because of the set decoration. The Universal Studios is bar none the best it's a fucking movie studio. It should not look like a set when you walk. You should feel like you're there, right? So you walk into the basement in Horlicks University where the crate is up on top of the sort of island, the examination island. And they had perched the crate so far up so they could have an actor stand into it that it was so off-putting that you were looking up. It didn't match the movie in any way, shape, or form, that it was kind of a total loss of a room. But then you get into Upson Pratt's apartment with lightning going off and projections of roaches everywhere. And there's the computer and that sound, that trilling sound that his fucking stupid phone makes. And you get to walk past his hermetically sealed room with the body and all the roaches being disgorged. I would say I've never had a better time in a haunted attraction, but I also went through An American Werewolf in London house, which is the best thing I've ever been through. And it was so movie accurate because you go through the slaughtered lamb and then you go into the apartment where he transforms. You go through the tube station with the fucking escalator. You end up in the porn theater walking from the screen's point of view, actor shooting in your eyes with a fucking giant, full-size wolf fucking jumping out at you. I've never been so scared in a haunted attraction. Did it, walked out, I was there early enough that I walked out, did it again, and I got scared in all the same places. I feel like I'm ranting now. We're no longer talking about Creepshow, but we're Creepshow adjacent.
I don't care. It sounds amazing. It sounds absolutely amazing. Yeah, see, I hear all this positive stuff, and my one experience was too scary for me. I didn't like it. It was too much.
Well, here's the thing. When you go to one of the attractions that have multiple houses and multiple scare zones and such, you can kind of ease your way into it. And you have greater and lesser degrees of fright. There are plenty of times where I've gone into a house knowing I'm not getting scared at all, but I just walk staring at all of the set decoration because it's one of those immersive things where I don't mind that it's an immersive thing. Immersive theaters, all the thing. I don't want to go to your living room and pretend we're fucking in your life or what, you know what I mean? All this new immersive shit. It's just more and more and more of it. And I don't want any of it. If they're not jumping out with a knife, I don't want to be part of your immersive experience. But it also has to be perfectly set decorated. And they do it really well. And the Creepshow one looked spectacular, except for that crate.
This is the difference. You see, you get into horror at 9. I start exploring it in my late teens. That's the difference. You can handle these things. I just run through and say, "Yeah, take my $20. I'm off. See ya."
Such a shame. And yes, that chainsaw was live, and they just took the chain off of it.
Okay, yeah, I could definitely, because we were saying to each other, we can smell the petrol, and we just pelted it out of there. Yeah, there you go.
They should not be using
Such a weird.
doors. We had at the Goratorium, we had an electric chainsaw. So it was like a foam prop basically, but it made the sound enough and it blew out smoke, I believe. So that was good enough. I accidentally brained somebody with it one time though. Still feel bad about it.
I'm sure you don't. I'm
No,
sure.
not at all. Guy deserved it.
Hey.
All right, let's get back
Okay.
to Jordy Verrill, I
So
guess.
yeah, Nunkhead. No, there we go past that.
Yeah, here's something I noticed because I rewatched the movie again. Needn't have, but any excuse, honestly. The scene where Geordie makes himself the most makeshift of screwdrivers by using the entire bottle as a swizzle stick. After he sits down and has the realization that he's growing, the camera lingers on him for a while. And Stephen King usually is wearing rather thick Coke bottle glasses, but here I noticed how goddamn dreamy his eyes were. Did you get that impression? Like
Yeah, it's
soul.
unusual. I totally do. Yeah, it's very strange to see him without his specs on, and it gives like you can see why he was chosen for this role. Like he gives like when I take my glasses off, it's much the same. Your face looks confused because it's not used to it. Do you know what I mean? It's just like your face has to get used to being different. And I think what's happened there is, yeah, like his face is just doesn't look quite right. Everything is just off with him, and yeah, his eyes are sort of. Wasn't he like a drunk at this time as well? So he had sort of like glassy eyes at that point. I think it was before the cocaine period, or was
I,
it
I
during it?
I think they're on the precipice of the cocaine period. This might, in fact, be the start of the cocaine period because, movie sets around 82. It's not
Yeah.
addictive, right? It's just happy dust. Yeah, he definitely was on one substance or another. I think I don't know how alcoholic he was at this point, just because of all the rah rah, the Shining is an anti-alcoholic screed that he keeps sort of banging on about. But yeah, I mean, he's not well here. Nevertheless, doesn't affect the performance or anything. I'm not saying that.
Well, I think I watched. I did an episode on Maximum Overdrive, and for it, I did do the deep dive. I haven't got the affinity with that film that I do for this one, so I did go and look at all the extras, and I went and looked at the interviews that he was doing around the time, and yeah, he would do that drunk thing of like you would say something, you sort of remember you saying it, but you then start going off into a different direction while you're trying to keep focus on what you were saying. It's like you're sort of too hazy to even know where you were. And he was doing that in interviews regularly. And whilst it's funny to sort of watch him keep up with himself, it's also really sad to see him try and keep up with himself. And like we talk about this segment of the Creepshow being really sad. And yeah, like when you think about Stephen King, like and his face, his manner, his whole life, it has been so successful and yet so sad, the elements that have happened to him in this time and like how he's dealt with it through entertaining us. Like what a hero. Like when he does go, like it's gonna be there's gonna I have nothing to compare him to in a modern day texture. I think it's gonna be like a legendary great, and it's nothing to do with these performances. Obviously it's to do with what he has written, but I would say always look at this performance, always focus on what he's done here because it's that important. And like we said at the very beginning of this, like it just gets overlooked and poo-pooed, maybe because it is so OTT. Can't tell you the reason, but it's shocking.
I'll tell you why. It's because of the way he says BAD. I think that part of it is so over the top that most people won't cotton to the rest. And that's Romero's fault because as you said he with Adrian Barbeau, he was telling her to go bigger and bigger. I know from here for this performance, he told King, the look that Wile E. Coyote has right before he realizes he's going to fall? I'd like you to play the part entirely like that. That expression. Which
Yeah,
makes sense
yeah.
in a way. But at the same time, the pathos of this character is really undeniable. Like the jokey parts of it are the fact that Jordy Verrill imagines that there's a department of meteors who will give you $200 for a whole meteor and nothing if it's broken. is so ridiculous. And the fact that a doctor has a well sanitized, but still a cleaver for which he's going to take off your finger without any anesthetic, I'm guessing. Like, those are funny bits, except when you factor in that every authoritarian figure who's coming down on Geordie is in the visage of his dead father, who's been dead, what, Christ, 3 years almost.
Yeah, yeah, spot on. Like, I tell you, it's making me feel sad, like talking about it in this way. And no other episodes do in this. There is that I mentioned it. There's a weight to Geordie Verrill that there isn't in the other episodes, and it's still fun. Like, I get the OTT stuff, like, and some of the lines, and also the slap on the face. There's like a tiny sound effect. I think that, like, it's too clunky. You didn't need it. Like, just have him hitting his face. Like, that'll sound good enough. It's not quite a like boing, but it's like still a where it didn't need to be there. It's so forgivable. Like, everything about it to me is just perfect. Perfect.
This segment was all of the segments of Creepshow had different editors, which I think which is a great idea, because if you're trying to not necessarily mix up styles, there was a unified, this is a comic book style, but somehow the pacing of each having a different hand sort of holding the splicer, like, adds a layer to it. And this one was edited by Pasquale Buba, if I hadn't already said it, who is a longtime collaborator of Romero, part of the Romero family. He went on to edit movies like Heat, and a veritable cavalcade of like every popular entertainment you can think of here. And what I love about his editing here is not only is it the exact right amount of pacing for like every shot and every sort of moment, or rather character beat, but Pasquale Buba is effectively the sound editor and the music editor on this one too. And more than any of the other segments, it's almost wall-to-wall library music, which is his way, his tipping of the hat to Romero himself. Because if you watch any Romero movies, that man loves library music. Watch Dawn of the Dead. I mean, I know they've got the Goblin stuff in there, but there's just as much library tracks. Night of the Living Dead, 100%. If left to his own devices, and I know Romero would have copped to this as well, it would be nothing but library music. And I can't blame him. So Pasquale Buba sort of like saying, here, it's your thing, George, but so here, let me do it your way. I mean, there's some John Harrison score in here, but I just love hearing the same tracks we've heard in a million anthology shows and horror things and whatever, completely recontextualized here with this poor man who can't afford more than Ripple Red to drink.
It's like, here's a hot take, like, with this one. Like, I think that the score dips for Geordie Verrill. I think the score for Creepshow as a whole is just phenomenal, but with this one in particular, it goes 250 sci-fi in too many places. Obviously, you can see why, but when I listen to it taken away from the film, it just feels out of place. It's really odd. And coming back to it, because I've listened to the score a lot more than I have in recent years than watch the film. Yeah, it's really noticeable. Whereas before I'd started listening to scores completely separated from the films, I'd never really noticed. But yeah, I did I thought it was a bit of a step down. I'm not saying it's rubbish. It's nowhere near rubbish. But I'm just saying, like, for me, the rest of it is so good.
Oh, musically, this is the least of it. I mean, it is effectively library tracks, which, if you're a fanatic like I am for it, you already have all of these albums and you can just go listen to them. Hearing those tracks out of context from the movie is more rewarding than hearing them included on a soundtrack, because it's the sudden like, whoa, hey, I'm in Creepshow all of a sudden. And yes, I do sometimes just listen to library tracks, like albums full of them. But the other thing is John Harrison, the composer overall for the movie, what he does here is what he added to the movie is just this sort of synthy kind of counterpoint stuff. And that to me is worse than the library music, which is that wah, wah, wah. Johnny, on to the Day of the Dead score, baby. What are you doing to us here? Because now you said what a phenomenal soundtrack it is. This, without hyperbole, is my favorite movie soundtrack of all time. The score for Creepshow, which was initially all he was supposed to record, by the way. Initially, Romero, being Romero, wanted nothing but library tracks for the entire thing, thinking it's a comic book movie from the 50s that'll be perfect for it. And then started noticing like, well, we kind of need a theme here and there. Like maybe we could, John. Something to Tide You Over. The music in that contains to me one of the most clever things I've ever heard in music, where he has taken a theme that one of the characters is singing at one point, which is Camptown Races, and then he plays that song through a synthesizer in such a mournful way. This is when Ted Danson has now realized that she's definitely drowning and he's next. There's no hope at all. It's this mournful thing. It's Camptown Races, and it fucking makes me want to cry.
It's like in that there is these also like I can't say it any other way than gentle slams. So like the slamming on the keyboard, but gently, and it's like a throbby thing that happens during it. And I'm just like, God, how did you do that? Because I can feel you slamming those keys, and yet it's not coming through. It's not doing that at all. It's so impressive.
Prophet 5 synthesizer at work, was it particular to that? Like we could bang the fuck out of it and still come out gentle? Maybe.
It is just so impressive. And I think it was a Waxworks record release that I like pre-ordered, and I loved it so much that I said to them, I reached out to them and said, look, you haven't got very good distribution in the UK. I'll just buy a stack and sell them. And I did. I just like bought a stack. I don't know. I haven't got any infrastructure to do this. So I just went on eBay and sold them at a normal price so I could break even on them. I just wanted to get these out to people over here. Oh, God, I love it.
That's fucking noble, man. Getting this music out there is what we need to be doing. You know, I bought when I was a kid, you mentioned you had like tape trading in England during the video nasty phase. Like for me, nowadays you can get anything you want just by going on Amazon or eBay or whatever. To find movie memorabilia when I was a kid required a certain amount of effort, including like if you would looked in the back of Fangoria magazine, there'd be these classifieds and you could say people would be selling movie posters, books, and whatever. So you would send to them and get back, the Xerox thing. This is what's in stock. And there was a trader in Florida, Rick's was the name of it, and he sold posters. And I bought most of my Creepshow posters from this guy, and he was always really solid. And he had the Creepshow soundtrack for sale, which I could not find on vinyl. That original Varese Sarabande release. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it's the standard kind of release at the time. Could not find it anywhere. He had a copy of it. sold it to me. And when it arrived, it was warped from the mail. And
Right.
so I could listen to three-quarters of something and then like that. And I wrote back to him and he said, no, just send it back. I'll send you a new one. And then I met him at a convention like 2 years after that. And I said, hey, I'm the guy who bought that Creepshow thing from you. It was warped. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry about that. Like, is the new one okay? And I was like, yeah, of course. And then he said, which I'm talking at least about the Camptown racist thing. He said, did you hear the joke in Something to Tide You Over? And I said, no, what are you talking about? And he said, it's Camptown racist. Listen to it. And like in my head, it suddenly clicked, like standing on this convention floor, like, oh, that's true. So, but anyway, the soundtrack itself, that's my experience with the soundtrack. Of course, I have it on CD and every track sort of I have the completely bonkers like completists out there found the disco song playing during that Don't Let Go during Father's Day when Ed Harris is dancing around and the footage I'm sure he wishes was burned. I love all of the music.
Man, I mean, we talk about iconic scenes. That scene from that was one that I could remember. The rest of it, I wasn't really into. So here's the very strangest thing with it. Father's Day was was one of the ones I just wanted to get through before it would kick off as a youngster. No idea why. Ed Harris dancing, like, yeah, burned into my soul. But at the same time, it was just a so-so. And now when I watch it or think about it or read about it, I want to know the most about that set, those characters, those actors, like the way the comic book frames the whole thing. Like it's really, really present in that one. It feels like the most important of the whole lot. Like to set this film up correctly. As I say, my initial starts with it was not big at all. I wasn't bothered about it. But like, I wonder how other people felt about it when they were growing up. Was that one as important to you?
When I was a kid, when I was first a fan of the movie, it was actually my favorite segment in the film. It's so simple.
It's too adult.
Yeah, but the setup is so evocative of the comics of EC Comics. It's the simplest story. You're horrible person gets killed for no good reason, comes back because or for good reason because the people who killed him are even worse than him in some way. And like I can get behind that. I grew up in New England. I grew up in the Boston area, just north of Boston. And so I've the kind of people that Stephen King are skewering there, sort of the old money New Englanders, like, yeah, man, I want to watch them get their heads twisted off and turned into cake, like that was I couldn't imagine a more enjoyable time than watching a bunch of rich people get theirs when I was 9. So yeah, I love this one. And particularly because most resurrection scenes for the undead when they come crawling out of the grave look, there's only a few instances where I can point to and go like, that's awesome. And the way that Nate comes out of that ground, man, where he's tearing the sod apart and emerging, it's so fucking scary that, yeah, I just loved him. And look, I'm 9 years old. The fact that he took the head and decorated it and got his cake was to me like the greatest bit of comedy and horror combined. Like that, I couldn't do better than that. And I like the rest of the stories. You're talking about adult. Like for me, like a story like The Crate, while I could, appreciate the horror of it, like a 9-year-old me didn't give a shit about psychosexual politics or like, power dynamics in marriage or like, interdepartmental politics at colleges. Like none of that was landing.
That's madness. Like, yeah, I do appreciate like a maggot-filled corpse. Like, I recently rewatched on the big screen Zombie, and like I just think, oh God, those corpses are so dusty and like so well presented. I so believe it, and yet like as a comic book zombie, like this is perfect. You would want it like this. Also, I need to know, is it all Savini doing that stuff? Because I know he's involved in this. Was it all his work?
Every bit of horror special effects on set is Tom Savini here. So yeah, he did the sculpt on Nate. I mean, he has a team, obviously, but yeah, that's him doing that. He what took 5 months to do Fluffy, the creature from the crate. That's all of his work.
Oh my word.
All of the Something to Tide You Over, the waterlogged corpses was him. Even that fantastic bust of E.G. Marshall that they have at the end where the roaches come pouring out of the chest, like that, all Savini all the time. Now, here's the thing, Paul, because not only will you get the bell and whistle of that fantastic documentary about it, but if the package that you get is worth its weight in anything, it'll include Tom Savini's home movies from the set of Creepshow, because Tom Savini always had a VHS camera in his hand, that new technology back in 82, 83, or 81 rather. And so he filmed a lot of the process of putting all of those things together. In fact, I know that you're going to lose your mind because he just walks around the set sometimes. So you're in that gymnasium and you are walking from Upson Pratt's apartment over to Jordy Verrill's house. It's fucking bonkers.
For the second time in this conversation, I've got chills now. So, like, I know there's like a Scream Factory 4K that came out last year, but I think it was limited edition. And before I knew about it, it was so. But that what tends to happen is if something like that happens in America, we'll get it a year after, and it tends to be vice versa as well. We get something, you'll get it a little bit later on from some different company. So I know it will be coming, but yeah, like I'm proper excited about it. I've waited years to watch this stuff, but I want to have this film presented in such a way that just like it can't be better, because we don't get the chance to watch these things. Like I know in America, and God, I wish I could remember what town it was. I should take notes. There was a drive-through, so you could just drive your car and watch Creepshow like during the pandemic. That's mental that you could see Creepshow and you could drive your car and oh, God, you're so lucky.
Yeah, we have a drive-in here in Las Vegas, which was one of the worst drive-ins to go to because it was situated beside a casino with a huge blinking sign that talk about light pollution. Like this town is killer for light pollution. And now this is going to sound horrible, but they recently demolished that casino. And I got to tell you, the experience of the drive-in is up 1,000%. Now you can actually see the movies. You know what movie I saw there? Quarantine. You've seen Quarantine, the remake of Wreck, right?
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's okay.
Not as good as Wreck, but it was passable. Except if you're trying to watch this dimly lit, basically night vision movie with a giant fucking casino light blaring behind it. I was like, I squinted the entire time. At the end, I was asked if I liked it. I went, I don't know.
That's cinema.
Bad, baby. Like, but good to know they're there.
I'm glad you corrected me on drive-in and not drive-through.
Drive-through is what to do at McDonald's.
Yeah, sorry. My Americana is tip top. It's about as good as my memory of
Creepshow. Well, no, just lines of dialogue. Next time we'll pick another segment and then we'll, I'll test you again. It'll be fine.
Oh man, you wait. When we get the 4K, then I want the test. We'll just do a test show. It'll be great.
Let's do a fucking commentary when you get that 4K.
Don't. Oh, don't.
Kidding?
Okay. I want to ask you, I want to wrap this up, but I want to ask you a few things. I know we've missed a few out and I'm really sorry. I'm running out of time, but I want to know because your show's about anthologies, like with regards to not forget the TV ones for now, but with film anthologies, is this top for you?
This is the actual perfect anthology for me. I don't find any fat in this movie. I don't find any misdirection in the movie. I think all the performances are solid. The music's solid. There's nothing I don't like about this movie. I mean, if you pushed me, I could probably point to one or two things that trouble me a little bit, but nothing on the order of I didn't like that story, or I didn't like the wraparound segment, or I didn't like those performances in those segments, which is the joy of anthologies for me, and obviously I cover them a lot, is the variety and the economy. I'm of a mind where Edgar Allan Poe thought that any piece of fiction should be no longer, it should not take you longer to read than a poem. It should be in one sitting. As soon as you break that spell and put the book down or turn the movie off for a moment so you can go to the bathroom or whatever, that whatever magic is occurring is gone. So anthologies are perfect because each of the stories can be that. And it I'm saying Creepshow's the best because it doesn't have any of the problems, but I don't care if one of the segments falls down because the next one's got a chance to be great. And in the case with Creepshow, it it came from these. Look, it's from fucking Stephen King and George Romero. If if you're looking for the best of the best, well, it's Stephen King writing it, George Romero directing it, Stephen King on set for the entire thing to do rewrites. It's this team of people. Like these are. I can't overestimate my estimation of George Romero and his company of players down in Pittsburgh. Look, there are varying degrees. I'm not going to argue for Jack's wife. There's always vanilla. Not necessarily when I'm popping in every once in a while, but I am going to watch Night of the Living Dead. I am going to watch Dawn of the Dead and Creepshow and Night Riders and Monkey Shines for fuck's sake. I like that movie too. But his best movie, I'll get back to why Creepshow's the best anthology. His best movie, Paul, not my favorite movie, but his best movie, unqualified, is Martin, his vampire film, 77. Have you seen that one?
Right. Okay. Yeah. I love Martin. It's a great film.
Love Martin. It's so personal and wonderful and just rife with urban decay. Anyway, so you got George Romero, who's got that pedigree going, and Stephen King. Like, I, I can't advertise the movie better than that, right? You think people would just be falling all over themselves to watch it. These days, they've got the Creepshow television series, which is a bit of a dilution of the original formula, as far as I'm concerned. Although I love it. I mean, I just love having the creep around in any form. But here's a question for you, Paul. Do you think the creep in the wraparound segment, was he there to help Billy, or was he there just to kill that dad? Was he there to comfort Billy in his moment of shame? Murder. That creep is
always murder on the mind.
What's your favorite anthology film? It's got to be Creepshow, baby.
100% Creepshow. I think within Creepshow there are 3 10 out of 10 stories. The other are 9 out of 10s. Very pedantic to rate them, but that's what I do on my show. And I don't think any other anthology has got that higher hit rate. It's got my very favorite one ever in it with Geordie Verrill. I also want to mention, if you haven't seen it, Hammer House of Horror episode called The Silent Scream, which I give a 10 out of 10 to. It's the one with Peter Cushing and Brian Cox. I just think that is as good as the Geordie Verrill story. But like, I was trying to think, I was going through everything. Like, I love Amicus's Asylum, and I think, oh, actually, that's the best wraparound that you've ever had in an anthology. I think that's amazing. And then I compare it to this one, and I'm like, well, technically, and yeah, probably for the story it's better, but I still prefer Creepshow. There's something magical about this thing, and yeah, it's got a lot to do with my youth, but also when you try and pull it away from that, like Creepshow has these targets that it's trying to hit and what it's trying to be, and I think it executes it perfectly, and no other film executes it perfectly, whether it's an accident or whether they just lucked out or whether they had this thing meticulously planned from the start. I don't care. I'll find out when I get that box set, but for me right now, there's nothing wrong with it. It set out to do a job and it did it perfectly. I can't want anything more as a horror fan.
Let me just echo what you're saying here about that wraparound segment. The reason, or the greatest innovation here, is that they decided early on that they're going to have this ode to comic books, and then decided we're going to let the comic book tell the stories. So we do get a wraparound in how the comic comes into our view and where it goes from there, but it doesn't interrupt at all. The problem with most anthology movies, and the reason that Asylum is so good, is it is its own story, and now we're hearing the stories from the story, and those are characters that we're following, and there's an eventual payoff. Here, it's the lightest of setups, which can be death for an anthology movie, but it's so deftly handled. Seeing panels of comic books just come to life. What more do you need? And not to mention the splash pages that we get to traipse past, the muscle man, the joy buzzers and exploding cigarettes, like all that wonderful business. Don't need a word from anybody. I just need a skeletal hand come in every once in a while and magically turn the page.
I mean, what else can you say? Well, actually, you could say a lot more. I think we could probably do another couple of hours, like just going through each bit individually. But thing is, here is the thing: there is a magic to it, and I worry that I'm going to spoil it, which is why I haven't bought any of the Blu-rays that or whatever that have come since. There are certain films I don't want to ruin. I remember ruining Star Wars for myself with all the behind the scene things and just I would saturate myself with it. And at the end, it spoiled that magic. And I really don't want to do that with this one film. It's like that one film that I just want to keep. Does that sound weird?
No, it doesn't, because I get that. I myself am a fiend and can't not spoil everything for myself. I need to know exactly what was going on when in the greatest and most detailed minutia possible. But I do understand having something as sacred as this. Look, if I could, I'm wondering if there's a movie that I would rather not know anything about the making of. No, no, but
Just flat.
but I can appreciate your reverence for the film. But I will also say that when that day comes, oh my God, what heaven is in store for you, Mr. Paul Waller. Now, Paul, when you're not here, you're clearly over there at A Year in Horror, but how can people find you when they want to find you? And I'm encouraging everyone to find him.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come on and chat with you. I've loved it. And I do like getting those snippets of information as much as I've avoided them my whole life. You've blown me away that it was in a gymnasium for a start. Like that might be something that you learned 20 years ago, just nonchalantly, but I'm like, what? So yeah, but if you want to look for me, I've actually very much try and not sell A Year in Horror with the band that I was in. It's constantly how can we sell ourselves, how can we market it, and I just wanted to get away from that. I started managing bands like just before COVID happened, and it was all about that. And it lost the magic. Music lost its magic for me because it was just business. So with the podcast, I've just decided let it grow organically. Not that like people are ripping my arms off to give me paid ads or whatever, but whenever it has happened, I've just shut it down. I'm not interested. So I haven't got the social media. I think I started a Facebook and then never updated it. I feel really bad about that. And the weird thing about Facebook, if I delete one thing, I think I've got to delete it all. And if that's not the case, I can't be bothered to work it out. So don't go there. I have a personal Instagram, which is Waller Not Weller. So if you are interested, come along there. But wherever you listen to podcasts, just type in A Year in Horror and you'll get me. And if you enjoy it, keep listening. That's all I want to say about it. I've done it as a personal thing. I knew I would have a small audience because my music stuff meant that people would listen and decide whether they liked it or not. And lovely stuff has happened because I've discovered a horror community where I just knew there was one because Fangoria exists, and these people like you, like many of my regular guests, they're the best. And like, this is the best thing that honestly has ever happened to me apart from like my marriage. It's just so incredible to meet all these people that feel the same way about movies as I do. So yeah, that's why I'm doing it. What else can I say about it? It's just like, if you want to find me, the best place to do is just type it into wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you don't, like, fair, whatever, it's good.
And if you look in the links here in the comments or whatever the fuck it is, the description, I'm going to link to your podcast. You're not selling it, I am. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, Midnight viewers, thank you for joining us here. Oh, I gotta plug my own self. Shit. Okay, Midnight Viewing, you're listening to it here, but all of the other shows I do a half-hour radio drama called Dark Destinations. I co-host a podcast about the television series Taxi called Night, Mr. Walters. That is HP's show. I'm his co-host on that. And frequent appearances over on the Projection Booth and the Culture Cast. Both those shows are definitely worth checking out. Everything is at Weirding Way Media. If you want to support this show in any way, and we'd really appreciate it if you did, that is patreon.com/Father Malone. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight. Actually, no, that's the usual sign off, but that's because we're in Tales from the Dark Side land. What's the Creepshow version? Oh, it's the most fun you'll ever have being scared.